of the things that I really found fascinating in your book is the fact we all have approximately 50 trillion cells in our body, and these cells are all self-sufficient. They have their own memory, they have their own immune system, and in fact you also go on to say that for 2.75 billion years there was only one-celled organisms alive on the planet.
Yeah, and the nature is, as the single cell evolved to be the most intelligent it could be, it ran into a physical limitation because intelligence is physically tied up with the membrane or skin of the cell. You can only have so much membrane. So evolution apparently stopped. It was like 2.5 billion years, just a single cell organism. Then it said, well, how can you have more evolution? The answer is cells decided to come together in community, because when cells come into community, they share awareness. So there's more awareness with 10 cells than there is with one cell. And there's more awareness with 1 million or 1 billion or 1 trillion. So when you look at a human being, while we see ourselves as single entities, the truth is we are made out of 50 trillion amoeba-like cells. And so our body is this giant community. And what makes it very exciting, as you mentioned, is, well, in my own work with cloning cells, I can take a cell out of your body and it could live outside of you. Why? It has its own intelligence. It has essentially every function in your body is present in a cell. So my 7-year-old vision manifests to be true when I got older, to realize cells are miniature people. And then you say, well, what about happens in the human body? And I go, this is where the issue comes in, is because you have 50 trillion cells living in community, but your mind is the government. When a government works in harmony with the people, then the people thrive and the community is in good health and grows. But when a government is not really supportive or not working in harmony with a community, then the government can cause the nature of that community to fall apart, or even lead to the end of the community. Well, that's what we're finding out. Our mind is the government. And when we entertain harmony and the right living in balance with nature and with each other, then we provide our 50 trillion cells with very life-supporting information and chemistry.
So harmony means giving the body good food?
Yes.
Not being stressed out?
Absolutely.
Living in a happy environment?
Yes. Basically it says, it's as I said, when I had my petri dish of cells, if I put it from a healthy environment to a bad environment, the cells got sick. But you didn't have to give them drugs. But all you did is take the dish from the bad environment and put it in a good environment. And the joke which I like to tell people is, well, this happens in a plastic petri dish, but guess what? We are skin-covered petri dishes. Underneath our skin is 50 trillion cells living in a dish, and the culture medium is the blood. And so when I change the culture medium in a plastic dish, I change the fate of the cells. And I say, well, then what controls the culture medium? My blood, the chemistry. And the answer is, my thoughts influence my brain, and the brain releases chemistry that matches my thoughts. So when I'm in stress or I'm afraid of the world, I release different chemistry into the blood than if I open up my eyes and I find myself in love. I release completely different chemistry. And it's like, well, all I have to ask an individual is, how do you feel when you're in total love, or how do you feel when you're in fear? And the answer is, well, I feel totally different. And guess what? All the cells are bathed in that chemistry. And so the feeling of love produces totally different chemistry in the blood, chemistry that supports growth and healing of the body and supports the immune system. And in contrast, when we perceive reasons to be afraid and we release stress hormones into our body, we actually shut off the growth mechanisms and the immune system to save the energy. Why? Because if you believe you're going to have to run from that lion, you want all the energy available to run from a lion. So when a person is in stress, they allocate their energy reserves for fight or flight, but take it at the expense of the health of the system, the immune part of the system. And so the more stress you're under, the more bad chemistry, in a sense, of not supporting you that you experience. And it was a very important point. In our evolution, stress or fear was not the mainstay of life. The mainstay of life was to be happy and live in the harmony of the environment. Every now and then a saber-toothed tiger would come. Okay, now it's time to be stressed out. Now it's time to run. But the point is, once you escape from the saber-toothed tiger, in the old days, then it's like, oh, back to health and harmony. And I say, well, what about today's world? Today's world is 24/7 run from the tiger. And this is not biologically sustainable, because the chemistry of protection contrasts with the chemistry of growth.
Yeah, it's interesting how the body, you point this out in Spontaneous Evolution, your second book, that how the body also is a snapshot of how we are as a human race.
Oh, absolutely, because what we would see from a new understanding of evolution, which is a great extension beyond the Darwinian belief, which is quite limiting, okay, and quite troublesome, in fact. Because just think about what the principal Darwinian belief is, that evolution is based on a struggle for survival with a competition for fitness. So that says, oh my God, then our world is, we're all out there in a dog-eat-dog rat race trying to survive, because if you stop running, the person behind you is going to run over you. So if that's your way of life, then every day, by definition, you are living in a stress hormone body because of all the fears that we have. And yet evolution says, no, evolution is based on community and cooperation. A body has 50 trillion citizens. They live in harmony with each other. And it turns out that every human being, we're beginning to find out, is like a cell in a larger community called humanity. So in biological terms, the organism that's evolving on the planet is not the human being. We already did that. The organism that's evolving is the superorganism called human civilization. And right now, humans are fighting each other and killing each other. And if I say, well, what would that look like inside the body if the cells fight each other and kill each other? And I say, oh, well, that's called autoimmune disease, self-destruction. And autoimmune disease can kill you from the inside.
And that's on the increase, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, because our biological lives are complements to the environment.
Yeah.
The more stress and more violence on the outside, the more that's taken inside in biology and converted to disruption and disharmony of your own cellular internal community.
So what can we then do as a human race? Maybe it's an obvious question, but here we are. We represent, in a way, the 50 trillion cells that are in our own bodies on a bigger scale. And here we are, we see the intelligent ones, the ones that are really looking and seeing what happens inside their own body. They're seeing what happens on the outside. But as you mentioned again in Spontaneous Evolution, there's also the consensus reality.
Yes.
And even though individual people can see what's happening, what can they actually do when there's this whole other, I suppose, stronger force playing its part?
Well, you're right. I mean, it's a stronger force because everybody's mind is like a tuning fork, because actually you can read brain activity from outside your head with a new thing called magnetoencephalograph. Most people are familiar with electroencephalograph, put wires on your head and read your brain function.
Okay, yeah.
The new one, magnetoencephalograph, they put a probe out here, and they can read your brain function from outside. Well, it's a very important point. He says, well, if you're reading my brain function from outside, then what am I doing? I must be broadcasting my brain function. So all of us are like tuning forks. But if we're all out of tune, then there's a tendency for even a tuning fork that tries to stay in tune will be pushed out of tune by something we call entrainment. And the issue is, how can you survive in this world? And the answer is you must essentially detach yourself from this field around you, not be taken in by the stories, not buy into the fear, not to buy into the threats on our existence, to start to recognize, look, we are creating these lives. If you buy other people's creation, then you manifest what they're creating. If you want what you want, then you have to not get engaged. And the more conscious you become, the less you are affected by the outside fields. And so this rising consciousness that we're seeing is the evolution of humanity to rise above the noise of the background and recognize you're the creator, just like we talked about. If you can create a honeymoon for yourself while you're in love, and everyone started to create a honeymoon for themselves, then all of a sudden the concept of war and violence would disappear, because if everybody's in love and everybody's in harmony and everybody's so excited by being here, then the competition and violence that we live by because of today's beliefs would disappear. And the reality is we are moving in that direction right now. Day by day, more people are taking back the power of saying, I'm not buying your belief.
You have to be consciously stand apart, don't you? And
Yes.
say, I'm not going to be part of this.
Right. And it's interesting because a lot of people say, well, I'm going to go in there and fight that system. And I go, you know, that's not really good either, because if you're fighting the system, then you're contributing energy, whether it's pro or con, to that system. The way to fight the system is not to be part of the system. And it's fun because I talked to some British people I know, I forgot what they were called, but they were people who are somewhat living all through England, but nobody knows where they are or who they are. They're sort of out there, and they're having this life independent of the government even knowing who they are. And it's like some level, we all have to start doing that. But when we do that, then we'll find there's more of us than the other ones. And then all of us who are on the outside of the system actually become the new system.
So it becomes this critical point where things start to shift, you feel?
Yeah, and I think we're really approaching that with 2012, and I think that is a very auspicious beginning because it's not a mystical thing. It's really a change in the energy fields of the Earth, because the Earth is changing its position in relationship to the Milky Way. So basically, the energy that comes from all the stars and the sun especially influence who we are. When we change our positions in the relationship to the field, we change our response because we evolved in the field of energy, and when the field of energy changes, so do we.